This is our latest project. A 1917 Gilbert, American Gilbert mantle clock. Steel plate movement. Why steel plates? Because it was pre-war or very early in the war and there was a shortage of brass for shell casings. Hence the steel plates. I thought initially that the wood looked like cherry fruit wood, but now that it's under some proper lighting, I think it's more likely to be oak. That looks like oak grain down there and down the side, so I've revised my opinion on that. I now think it's oak. It's not pink enough. See, that's not pink enough for cherry fruit wood. Alright, we've obviously got a loose hand there, flapping around in the breeze. That's the original weight that came with it. That's the original key. And that small key up there, which is actually the size of a watch key, goes into the top there. I'll open the glass, goes into there and sits on there, and that adjusts the length of the pendulum leader that it hasn't got at the moment, so we'll have to put one of these on, a suspension spring up the top there, pendulum leader part down there. We'll measure it, we'll see what's written on the back of the plate. There should be a measurement for the pendulum length. We'll cut it to fit, turn it up on the end, and we'll put a bob on it and then take it from there. I'll close the front glass again so it doesn't get broken. Clicks in there nicely. Alright, I'll turn it round. The case is in pretty good shape actually. There's not very much wrong with it. A little bit of scratching here and there, a lot of rust on it, but we'll remove that. And some of my super duper beeswax formula polish will bring that up rather nicely, I think, without too much worry about it. Alright, now here's another thing you don't do when you're working on clocks, and I'll put a small picture of this up and show you exactly what it is. Someone has written their name and date and stuff along the back of the clock. That is a serious no-no. You don't do that. Don't deface clocks and clock cases. There's another one, a big X on there. Alright, let's see what we've got in here now. I'll turn that round and lift that up a little bit to give you a better look. Okay, steel plates of course. This is the section that lifts the pendulum leader up and down, which isn't there. This one here, the suspension spring, will fit there. It'll go in through the crutch. We'll cut the end of it and bend it and then put the bob on it. But initially that seems to be the only part that's missing, but we won't know until we get the movement out. The movement strikes on the hour. Quite nice resonance on that coil gong, though it's a little bit rusty. We'll clean that up before it goes in again. And it strikes a half an hour. Cute little note on a cup bell. Alright, so that's pretty much, I think, no, you can't quite see. The escape wheel is turning when I move the crutch, and if I, there we go, you can see it's working right there. Alright, now, first thing we have to do, I'll put the back door on again, close it down, bring that across to hold it. It's a bit tight. There we go, gone too far now. Done. Alright, back to the front again, turning it over carefully. Well, the back door held up really well, didn't it? I'll close that again and hold it with my finger this time as I turn it over. That grain's not too bad, and I think that'll come up very nicely with some wax polish on it. A split down the front, but it's 105, 6, 7, 8 years old, so I suppose it's not too bad for that. First thing we'll do, we'll open up the bezel with a glass in it, and no, it's not too bad. Alright, that's okay. Alright, first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the hands off, and there's a little knurl nut on there. I'll take that off first, unscrew that, put it in the dish, lift off the minute hand. I think we'll be re-bluing that. Yeah, it's a bit rusty. Now, a couple of fingers underneath the hour hand, or a finger and a thumbnail underneath. Turn it slowly backwards and forwards, lifting it up, and off it comes. Not in quite such a bad condition as the other hand, but we'll blue it anyway. Okay, that's got the hands off it. Close the bezel again, make sure it's locked down, turn the movement over, open the back door, crack down there also, but for 105 something years you can't complain. Okay, alright, now first thing we'll do is we'll take the gong out. To do that, turn the case round, and you can see down here a little nut that's holding it on. I'll use a pair of multi-shifters on it because you won't have a, there we go, we won't have a little spanner that size up here in the clock room that'll fit. So we'll just run that off, pull the gong out. I'll put the locking nut back on so you don't lose it. Little bits of rust you can see on it. They're not, oh yeah, that side's a bit more serious. It's had a bit more moisture on it. We'll clean that up before it goes back in. Alright, and there's our movement. Now, long shaft screwdriver. We'll take the movement out, undo these 4 screws in here. And, well, that was not magnetic as it didn't catch. Alright, take the rest of these out. Then we can start having a look at the movement. We'll read whatever's written on the front plate, gather some more information. One's rolled under. Here it goes. I'll put them in a dish in a moment, but we'll get them out initially. Another one, and the 4th one. They're obviously not the original screws that went in. They're far too modern for that. We'll have a look at them all. That's not an early 1900 set of screws, but yeah, they're a little bit rough. I'll check the other ones and see. That one's not too bad. That one's pretty rough. That's a crappy looking screw, look at it. The slot out by 1/2 mil, 3/4 of a mil, not even in the centre. Alright, we'll clean those up and recut the slots before we put them back in again. Okay, now time to remove the movement. Lift it out, turn it over. I'll put that down on there for the moment, just to hold it while I remove the case. Connect the back door again, and now lift it up, and there's the movement. Right, let's see what we can see on here. You can see it's stamped 16. That's its year date, 1916. I was only out by a year, so that's not too bad. There's the G for Gilbert, and it says over here, Gilbert Clock Company, Winstead, Connecticut, USA. And the movement seems to be in not too bad a condition. Oh, it's moving around relatively freely. What do we got up here? There's the escape wheel. You can see that turning around when I move the crutch. This wire here's a bit on the loose side. It's also double thickness because it's not the correct thickness. We'll change that when it goes back in. A little bit of oil on it, run over. Though most of the parts seem to be relatively good, but some of the arbors could do with a clean. We'll attack them with some steel wool once they've, actually before they go into the ultrasonic cleaner. You can see here there's oil has run into the, in between the leaves there on that pinion. You can see it on the end of the tweezers there. Clean that in a second. And also a fair bit of oil has coagulated down on that arbor there, and the hammer's got pretty good pressure on it. I'll turn that over. We'll see if the count lever's working properly. There it is there. See if it's going to fall into a deep slot. One more. This one. There we go. It's fallen into a deep slot and stopped. So maybe, other than not having a suspension spring and a pendulum leader, this movement mightn't be in too bad a condition. Alright, let's start doing some close-ups on this. There's our movement. Now the first thing we'll do, we'll turn it over, put it face down. We're going to remove the cup belt simply because we can't put the movement flat on my movement holder. Now I need a 6.5mm spanner for it, and I can't find it. I've got a 6 which is a bit tiny and a 7 which is marginally larger, so we'll very carefully spin it round. We don't want to put too much pressure on it, and strip any threads. A little bit tight, well, a little bit more with the spanner. That's better. Cup belt comes off. I think we'll be able to clean that up a little bit, I think. I'll just give it a quick run over with a little bit of steel wool and see what a difference it makes, if any. Yep, taking a little bit of rust off. You can see the piece where I've run over with the steel wool there. So we'll run over with the steel wool before we put it back, and we may well hit it with a Fordham too to put a bit of a shine on it. Alright, put that aside, and I don't know, that may not come out. Alright, that's better. The movement sits flat. So we're now ready to start taking the movement apart. And before we do that, we have to curtail the springs, and for that I'll turn that over the other way again for the moment so we can see what size key we need in the letdown tool. It's a little bit tight. That's a 5. Right, try the 6. 6 is usually the go-to size. That's our letdown tool. The other pieces of equipment we need a mainspring letdown clamp. Being those, they're used to curtail the power, the energy of the spring. So what we do in actual fact, I'll turn the movement over, lie it down flat there, and then have a look and see. I think they're both the same size, yes. The other ones are being used, so that will be the size that we'll use. So what we've got to do is wind the springs up so that we can slip the clamps over them, and then we let down the springs, the main springs, until they engage with the clamp. So first up, I'll get our key and we'll start winding the main spring up. Take it off there, it might be easier to get a handle on it, I think. Wind the spring up. Now we're going to have a look and see. That doesn't have to come up very much more. You can see how close that is now. Right, I'll give it another couple of turns. And once again, try the mainspring clamp, slide it in under there, and pull that round. That's not quite fitting through. There's a lever in there. Well, that's the lever that triggers the cup bell. Alright, so we'll have to look at sliding I'll tighten that up a little bit more. That lever is perfectly positioned so that we can't slide the clamp in. That's better. There's a bit more room there now. And see if we can get that down towards the bottom. I'll pull that lever over. No, that's still not. Alright, I'll let that one sit for the moment. I'll do the other side, and then I might have to do that side off camera so that I don't damage the cup bell lever. Let's see what we've got here. Probably not down enough yet, bit more. I can't see any impediments in this one, so we might be in good shape. Yep, cool. So that slides through. So what we do now, turn the movement back in its back, make sure that the clamp is there, and then find our click, which is in there. Put our let down tool on the winding arbor, take a light turn on it to take the pressure off the click, holding the movement still. Let the let down tool run round in your hand a little bit and then let go of the click, because we need to see how tight we are on our clamp. Alright, it's a little bit too tight. I'll wind it up a tiny little bit and that clamp will fall into place. There we go. Alright, keep that there, and let down tool once again. The small screwdriver, find where the click is, a little bit of pressure on the spring, hold the movement so it doesn't spin, pull the click out a little way, and one turn on the let down tool, and we should be getting pretty close, I think. There we go, we're virtually there. We've got to come down the tiniest little bit. So back we go again. This time we want about half a turn on the let down tool. Same thing, hold the movement. Whoop, that'll do us. I hope we haven't gone too far. Turn it over. No, we're about right. That's holding there now. So I can now repeat the operation with about a quarter of a turn. Let the click go. Take the let down tool out. Turn it over, check it, and yep, that's strong enough to hold it in place. Okay, movement back on the block again. This time we can let the spring down completely. Hold the movement, wind the let down tool and hold the click out, and let the let down tool run down in your hand. Turn it over, and there we have it. Spring is contained. Right, now I'll do the other one off camera, because you can see here that lever that lever that I'm pulling there is the one that activates the cup bell, the hammer for the cup bell, which sits on there. But it is very, very close to that spring, and it's making it quite hard to get the clamp on. So I think what I'll have to do is tie it down even tighter and have to let it out a bit more. All right, I'll do that off camera and then I'll come back. Well, that's got both the springs contained now. I'll turn it over. You can see both the mainspring clamps. I had to wind this one down very tight, so it was actually wound up to about there, just solid, so that I could get the clamp underneath that lever there and then very slowly let it down. But it's in there now safely and it's not a problem. So we're now ready to start taking the movement apart. What we do before we do that is we check to see where the springs tie off. As I said before, that one there's double thickness because it's the wrong size. We'll change that and get that operating properly. And when we look down the bottom here, there's two of them here, two springs, one there, one there. That's the hammer spring, keeping positive pressure on the hammer. And that one there is the spring that keeps positive pressure for the cup bell, that little guy there. So we've got hammer on the left, cup bell on the right. Okay. Now it's a different configuration here because we've got one nut on the front and 4 nuts on the back. If you've got 5 nuts, one in the center to hold the center, you normally have it on the back. So we'll start off with taking that one off first. Our 7mm spanner, and very carefully start spinning it round. I'll have another look for the 6.5 later on, because that 7 fits that pretty well. And I'm not sure that that's loosening. I think it might be. Oh no, it might be right. I thought it might be just spinning on its post, but post didn't seem to be disappearing anywhere into the. Oh yep, we're right. Getting looser. Not in any hurry, but it is getting looser. I might try this little guy. There we go. Yep, now it's coming off. Still pretty tight. I'll open him up a bit and spin it round. Seriously, it doesn't want to come off. But anyway, unfortunately, it doesn't have any say in it. So back to the movable jaws again, and we'll just spin it round. There we go. Finally decided to let go. Very nice of it. All right, that's the first one. This blued cheesehead screw is badly damaged. Someone has used the incorrect size screwdriver when trying to remove the screw from the movement. The blade was obviously too short to fit the slot in the screw head. Thus the screwdriver blade slipped up out of the slot and damaged the screw head. Before it is reinstalled back into the movement, it will have to be repaired, either on a lathe or manually by hand. To do this, you will need the following tools: a pair of latex gloves, a lathe if you're going to use one, a pin vise, a pivot file or small tooth file, an India stone and a degusset or synthetic ruby stone, and also a burnisher. These are the steps required to return the screw to its original condition. First, hold the screw securely in a pin vise, then file the top of the screw flat, preferably with a pivot file or another fine tooth file till there are no more marks on it. Then use the India stone to smooth off the top of the screw. Now repeat that step with the degusset stone and finally burnish the top of the screw. Now using a screwdriver file, clean up the damage on the slot. The screw is now ready to be blued. For the bluing process, you will need the following tools: a spirit burner, denatured alcohol or methylated spirits, a pair of tweezers, a small piece of cloth soaked in clock oil, and a pair of latex gloves, as oil from your skin will tarnish the finished product. Use the tweezers to collect and hold the screw that is to be blued. Hold the screw in the spirit burner flame. Move the screw into and out of the flame slowly so the screw heats evenly. Watch as the screw changes colour. It will change from light straw to straw, then to a purple blue, and then it will turn blue. This is the colour you are wanting. Now drop the screw into the container of methylated spirits or denatured alcohol. Lingering in the flame for a fraction too long will turn the screw from blue to grey. If this happens, you will have to prepare the screw all over again. Remove the cool screw from the methylated spirits and check that it is the correct colour. If so, dry it on a clean piece of cloth and then place it on the oily rag and rub it between your thumb and fingers. The screw is now ready to be installed back into the movement. I might try this little guy. There we go. Yep, now it's coming off. Still pretty tight. I'll open him up a bit and spin it round. Seriously, it doesn't want to come off. But anyway, unfortunately it doesn't have any say in it. So back to the movable jaws again, and we'll just spin it round. There we go. Finally decided to let go. Very nice of it. Alright, that's the first one. Now we can turn the movement over and start to loosen the other nuts on the back, bearing in mind there may still be a little bit of pressure on the train from the mainsprings, though we'll be aware of that once we start lifting the plate. We might have a couple of wheels spin a little bit while we're taking the plates apart. And a couple down here, we'll give them a spin and see what we're up against. Ooh, that is tight. And the fourth one over here. People love crunching things down way in excess of what they need to be. Tightening nuts and hammering tapered pins in and that sort of rubbish. Alright, that's a bit easier. I'll do a tiny bit more up here on this one. Then we'll lift the plates a tiny bit to the limit of the nuts and see what happens in the way of movement in the wheels. And I'll take this off. Doesn't seem to be anything untoward there happening at the moment, but we haven't lifted the plates. That's when we'll see what's happening. and a bit more there. Now what do we got there? Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem. Gee, some of those pivots are pretty disgusting. Look at all the oil and gunk on that. Dear oh dear. Right, we'll continue with undoing the nuts, and we'll take them right off. And that top one there's still a bit tight, so we'll have to continue to use the spanner on it at the moment. There we go. Turn him round. Last one down here. And I think that is about it. All right. We'll very carefully start lifting the plates. Start at the bottom. They're still a bit tight, so I think we might have a bit of tension in there at the moment. That one, and that one. And see if they'll come up a tiny bit. They're about right. Now, these end ones, the bottom ones. That one up and over. That seems to be alright. This one will tell the story though. So, very carefully lift that up. Now, that plate, they're loose. That's loose. And yeah, a little bit of tension there. Nothing too dramatic, but I'll undo these couple of springs here, see if I can get in under them. There's one. Second one, if I can get a reasonable grip on it. There we go. Straighten it up a little bit so it'll drop out. And now we should be able to remove the plate. All right. Look at the oil on that. Whoa, look at the gunk. That is seriously gunked up. We'll have to clean that up. And actually we probably could have left, yeah, I think we could have left the spring on the cup bell in through the plate, so I'll put that back in again. That appears to be not needing to be undone, and twist it down a bit, and pair of pliers will clamp it down and hold it in place. There we go. That's our cup bell. All right. You see all the muck on my gloves from just handing the back plate. All right, well that's done. See what the pallets look like. Yeah, they're not too bad. There's a tiny little bit of a groove worn in there, not very much. It's more polished actually than a groove actually cut into it. but we'll touch those up before we put them back in. And obviously we'll do all the pivots. You can see the oil that I'm getting off from that, so that'll have to be cleaned. And there's our movement. Better clean my gloves up a bit before we start doing anything to that. They don't look too bad. That guy's come out of there. Put him back into there where he belongs. And just check and see that we've got everything in the right place. Alright, there we have it. I'll grab a photo of that so we can put everything back in the correct orientation. Then I'll take them out and we'll put them in our foam block. And look at the gunk on the escape wheel. Look at the muck on that. Alright, not a problem. Put that back where he belongs, which is in there. And that, lots of oil on that stuff. Alright. We're ready to start taking movement apart now. So we'll take the parts out and we'll put them into our foam block in the correct orientation. We'll start off with the going train. The escape wheel comes out. The ways at the top of the train. Then the third wheel. And the second wheel is pretty caught up down in there actually. Whoop. Well, might have to leave that and take the... I'll move the foam block out of the way and we'll remove the mainspring and the great wheel. If we can get them out, that'll give us a little bit more room to move. Still pretty tight there. Alright, back to plan B. We'll go back to where we were. We'll take the hammer out. I think we've undone the spring on that. Yep, there it is. Slide that out. Put him over there. Now, off to the strike side. So, first out will be the levers. That's our J-hook lever with the crappy piece of wire on it that we'll replace. Then the lift lever. It's pretty tightly in there actually. I think there's a little bit of pressure in there somewhere. I'll put my fingers on that just in case there is. Well, it's almost out, but right, we'll leave that for a sec. Take the fly out, put it in our foam block. The warning wheel. Some of these are pretty tightly in there. Well, we can get the lift lever out now. That's the lift lever. I think what we're going to have to do is remove the springs before we go any further, because the great wheels are being forced up into the rest of the wheels and they're a bit hard to get out. That's the maintenance cam. Now the first wheel comes out, goes down there into our block. Now we should be able to relatively easily get that spring out. It did come out okay. Alright, that's a count wheel. obviously on that. We'll take the springs off and clean them in a moment, but those pieces will go through the ultrasonic cleaner. That one there is still really tight. I'll have another look at that and see if I can. It does move back a little bit, but it's still pretty damn tight. That's got him. The mainspring we've got out. There's a click, the ratchet, and the spring. They seem to be pretty damn new actually, but we'll check that as we get into it. That's the going side train. So now we should be able to get the first wheel out easily enough. There we go. First wheel. And now down the middle here, we'll take out, oh, look at the oil on that. And down there, and there, we'll check that in a minute. This piece here is called the cannon arbor. God, look at the oil on that on my gloves already. Haven't done any work to it yet, we're just trying to take it apart. And that should slip straight off, but it doesn't. So I won't force it at the moment. I'll look at that off camera. That should just come straight out. Alright, that's the motion works, which is stuck. That's a little cam on the minute arbor that lifts the J hook. That piece there. And when that hook runs over the lever down there, that lifts the J hook up, and as that comes up, levers there, lift the lift lever. Initially the movement will go into warning, and then 4 or 5 minutes after that, the movement will start to strike. Good grief, look at the oil on there, gasp. Right, let's have a quick look at the plate here and see what we've got. Look at the dirt and the excess of oil on that. Someone has really gone to town on this. Look, oil, muck and oil, oily, every one of them. Every one of those is oily. What have we got in the way of posts? How cool is that? If you like an oily movement, it's pretty damn good. Alright, I'll clean that up. But we'll clean up the plates because they're steel. We won't put them into the ultrasonic cleaner. We'll clean them up with some kerosene and then put them in some lighter fluid to get rid of that. There's more gunk there. Look at that. I can pick it up with a piece of pegwood. That one there. That's attractive, isn't it? Or not? And there's the gunk that I got from those couple of bushings. You can see all the oil on the end of the pegwood. That'll have to be sharpened down to about there now to get rid of that. Alright, now we're going to start to prepare the parts to go into the ultrasonic cleaner. I think I've got most of the oil off my gloves for the moment. I'll have to change them before we start putting the movement back together again. Okay, as usual, cut a bit of wire, bend it in half, put all the movement parts from the one train on them. That way you will always know when the parts come out where they will be relocated back onto the plates. Especially if you're beginning, it's a good idea to do that, because initially you can't recognize the shapes of the wheels, and you can attempt to put them back in the wrong way or upside down, and that doesn't work very well. Alright, smaller piece now. So we can put the motion works on it. Oh, it's got a bit of, oh, look at the oil on that. Alright. Rag, I'll clean the oil off that before we put it in. Want to give the ultrasonic cleaner the best chance of actually cleaning things up. I'll pop that back on because it's a little bit tight. Turn that round and it won't fall off. Tie them up together. The minute wheel and the hour wheel on there, and very easily another piece of wire. Being an American clock, all the wheels are nice and big, and we can slot them all in together and they all go onto our piece of wire. In some movements that doesn't happen. You've got to put the pieces in separately, but they seem to be doing all right at the moment. All right, there's those parts. I'll put the nuts into one of my excellent little tea strainers I've got here. Pair of tweezers. Pop them all in, including that crappy one that looks really yuck. We'll probably have to do some work on that before we put it back in. They're all the nuts secured in there so they won't drop out into the bottom of the cleaner dish. Now we remove, actually I'll put a key on that, and the easier way to do that, where's our letdown tool? That on there, that'll hold it so we can get a bit of a wind on it. And that way should pull it off easily. Once it's going to be in use, usually these things are pretty loose and they just slide off, but every so often you find one that doesn't want to come to the party. Alright, check down here, see what we've got. That's the way it winds up. So obviously we've got to take it off in the opposite direction. And hold that still and then wind it backwards and forwards. Might have to open up the inner coil. There we go, that's got him. He's come off. Still got the clamp on it, so that's no drama. As usual, excess oil on there. Some people love covering their clock movement parts in oil under the incredible idea that if you put a lot of oil on it, it's going to work, as opposed to knowing what you're doing and actually repairing it. Alright, as usual, this is the going side train, so that's ready to go into the cleaner now. We'll take off this other one here, strike side train that's got the, oh dear, that is tight. There we go, that's got him. Right, we'll clean those up soon enough. Let down tool goes back over there again, and look at the slop on that. Good heavens, you could change your car oil with that just about. There's about enough on it. Horrible, not very nice at all. All right. So, as I normally do, I don't put any pieces of wire on the going side train. Great wheel, I put 2 pieces on the strike side. Give it a quick turn round with a pair of pliers. Like so. That way when it comes out, we know it's the strike side. But sometimes we don't have the count wheel on it. So it's good to get into that practice to put it on, because if you haven't got the count wheel, you can run into strife. But we've got a count wheel there, so we'll consider ourselves lucky. Now we'll get the dish from the cleaner and we'll put the parts into it. No plates going this time because they're steel. We're going to clean them separately. So we'll just stack the part into the basket, line them all on the bottom. They'll all be below the level of the liquid. And there they are. Put our wire away, we don't want that now. The parts have come back from the ultrasonic cleaner. So we'll get them sorted out and put back into our foam block again. That's the motion works, those two pieces there. I'll cut the wire off that, get rid of that, put that in the bin in a moment. And that's the motion works reassembled. Looks pretty clean. Alright, put that there. Going train great wheel, looking nice and shiny. Put that in there with our mainspring from that side. And as you'll remember, we'll turn it over so you can't see the count wheel for a start. I always put two pieces of wire on the strike side train going wheel so you can tell them apart. In this instance, of course, it has the count wheel on it. You can hardly go wrong with that. But when you pick up a clock at an auction or a collectibles fair or a garage sale or something like that, you never know whether the springs on both sides of the clock are original or not. They might have been tampered with, one of the springs might have let go and broken, and the whole end has got a tear in it, so you can't use it. So what people do, instead of putting a new spring in, they'll cut 6, 8, 10 inches out of the spring, bodgy up another hole in it and shoot it off and say, there you go, your clock's fixed now. But it's not fixed, it's got a bodgy repair on it. So because of that, plus when each of the pivots on the great wheel are running in their bushings, they never really run correctly true. They're always slightly out, and there's a difference between the one to the other. Consequently, that's why we keep the two great wheels and the two mainsprings separated so we know which is which and put them back into their current order. Alright, that's the going train there. Doesn't look too bad. A little bit of marking on the escape wheel, not much, a little bit. Yeah, the leaves in the lantern pinion look alright. Right, we'll pop that over there. First wheel goes there. Then the second wheel. Check the lantern pinion. Yeah, that looks alright. We'll run over the pivots later and polish them, of course, before we put the movement back together. But I'm just doing a quick run over to check and see what work we need to do. No, those leaves are alright also. Fair enough. Now, strike side train. Cut the wire off it. Take the pieces off, one at a time. The fly. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad. Take that piece of wire out. Warning wheel. With this pin there, of course, it's an easy one to tell. Any wheel in a striking clock that's got a pin on it goes in the strike side. There are never any pins on any wheels in the going side train. Maintenance cam looks alright. Alright, cool. That's done. And the first wheel, we'll check the leaves on that. No, that's looking alright. And they haven't come up too badly in actual fact in relation to colour. And last but not least, the pillar nuts. There they are. Alright, put them in the little dish so we know where they are. And there's our parts. And our foam block, we'll put them in there. Little holes there so they don't fall out, so we know where they are. I will show you how to make a foam or polystyrene block for clock parts in one of the lessons in the new clock repair course I'm currently working on. The course will be released later on in the year. There we go. Third wheel. Second wheel. The first wheel on the going side train. Alright, what we're going to do now is we're going to clean up both the plates, the front plate and the back plate. And as we saw before, we're going to get rid of those horrible messes of old oil and dirt and grime that's collected over the years, and that's excess oil on those two bushings, but the rest have got heaps of dirt and gunk on them. Look at that one there, or even that one up there. What a fabulous grinding paste that is, slowly grinding away the pivots. Good thing there's steel pivots and steel plates. This movement would be in a real mess. Alright, I'll get a tub of kerosene and a tub of lighter fluid and we'll start cleaning. And a toothbrush, of course. Right, we've got a tub of kerosene here. We'll start off with the front plate. We'll do the inside of it first, run over it with a toothbrush, and we'll get rid of all those horrible marks and the grinding paste and old oil and everything else that's clogging up the bushing holes on this plate. Slowly, methodically work your way around. Do it properly the first time. There's no reward for rushing it. It doesn't work out that way in clock repair ever. So we'll turn it over. Back to the other side now. Run over every hole on the plate, every part of it. And having a firm bristled toothbrush, you can get soft ones, etc., but having a firm one like I've got here, the bristles tend to drop down into the bushings and give them a little bit of a hurry up while they're there. Alright, that's how easy it is. That's the first one. I'll get some lighter fluid or naphtha now, put that into a dish, and we'll move that plate over and drop it into there. Give it a quick shake, turn it up the other way, and we'll just let that sit there while we clean the back plate. Alright, same thing again. Look at that horrible stuff up there. That'll disappear in no time at all when we clean it up with kerosene and a toothbrush. Hey, gone already. Very efficient way of cleaning pieces that you can't put into an ultrasonic cleaner. Just working round. Both sides of it, rubbing our toothbrush along, right over that post there, give that a clean. And that looks not too bad. Alright, I'll turn that over and start on this side of the plate. This kerosene is excellent for this job with a toothbrush. It lifts things really quickly, gets rid of dirt in all shape and form, and old oil and grease, and unfortunately DW40 that people are under the impression is a lubricant, but it isn't. It's a dewatering agent. The worst thing you can do is put that on your clock movement. In a very short period of time it gunks up, and that's the end of your clock working. Alright, I'll give our toothbrush a little clean up, get rid of the kero out of it. Now we'll run over the plates, top and bottom, to make sure they've got a good coverage. Even at this stage you can see how good the plates are looking. They're starting to look pretty damn new in actual fact. Alright, that's the first one. I'll put that over there. Now we'll get the next plate. Same thing, back into the naphtha. Submerge it halfway to get a start, and then work on it with our toothbrush, which will remove the last remnants of the kerosene that are on it. Up and down, round about, all over the place. Turn it round. Being careful of that rod sticking out there, we don't want to bend that. And get that down there. And that is pretty much done, I would think. Those holes look alright. Okay, now I'll get my heat gun. I'll put these highly flammable liquids out of the road first. There's not much chance of them bursting into flame, but we want to reduce that to slightly less than 0 if possible. Put him on low. I'll get the front plate first and slowly run over the plate, backwards and forwards. We don't hold the heat gun in any one position for any period of time. It'll heat up the plate and it may tend to bend it or warp it. So that's why we move the gun backwards and forwards. It's a very efficient method of getting rid of the naphtha, and that's all it takes. Alright, well that part of the operation's finished. What we do now, take a piece of pegwood and go over all the holes in the plates and check to see if they're clean. And they all seem to be pretty good so far. No dirt on the pegwood at all. We run over the front, check every hole, and then we'll repeat the process on the back. How clean's that? Lovely. Check these ones down here. That Kero did a pretty good job actually. And the back ones. And then I'll run over the other plate off camera. And I'm doing exactly the same thing on both sides of both plates. And they're very clean, so I can fly through it pretty quickly. That one. That one. And that one there. Both sides. That one up the top there. Alright. I'll do the other plate and then we'll come back. We're going to remove the mainspring clamp from the going side great wheel first. I'll open that up. I'll put the spring back onto the main wheel. We're going to put the winding arbor section, the square section, into the chuck, and then we need, actually I'll turn that round a little bit before we start and get a better view of it. Okay, we'll try that. It's better, we'll have a better view of that now. Right, so what we're going to do now, we're going to wind the spring winder up. Make sure that's tight. Remove it, and I think that's sliding actually. I'll undo that. Yep, I'm pretty sure that that is sliding. I'll loosen that off and reset the, yeah, it slipped in a bit far. Alright, Let's try that. You just heard that noise there. That means that the lug on the winding arbor has come out of the center of the mainspring. So I'll show you what we do about that to tighten it up. Release the tension on the chuck. Take the mainspring out, and when we're turning it, what's happening is you can see there's a gap there. There shouldn't be that big a gap, and as the lug turns round, it catches on the whole end and then drops out. Where's our let down tool? As it winds up, it gets tighter and tighter, and then it drops out. Alright. How we fix that? May not need to. Looks like it might have finally caught. Well, tighten that down again. Put our holding arm back on. Put the safety back up. It should just slide into there. And get back to winding again and see if we... Nope, still sliding out. Alright, so how we fix that problem, we'll take the great wheel off again, unwind it, wind and might jump it out easier. I think, no, it's still there. It's holding relatively well when it's not very tight. As it gets tighter, it jumps out. And that's the lug that we're talking about, that lug there. And that has to catch on the whole end inside there. But you can see there's a pretty decent sized hole there, so what we'll do with that, we have to reduce the size of that. And to do that, we find where the end is, and then using a long nose pair of pliers, we slide it into the gap. Haven't got a lot of room to move here with the spring winder still set up. And then we just wind it in the direction of it being wound up, and that will slowly reduce the size of the hole in there. And you can see we're starting to reduce the size of the hole in there because there's a gap appearing there. Alright, we'll try that and see if that's going to hold. Push the spring back onto the great wheel. That looks like it might have held. We'll give that a try. Alright, winding arbor back into the chuck. Put our end in and the safety on, cover that over, and now start winding and see how we go. And you can see that that has solved the problem, and the mainspring clamp comes off straight away. So reverse the flow in the winder and then slowly let it down. We don't want to let it rush because it'll blow out all over the place. You can see it's unwound there now. Alright, take it off the clamp for there, and there's our spring. It's very dry, strangely enough, seeing everything in the clock is flooded with oil, but that is very dry actually. Right, so we're now going to clean that with some kerosene. I'll put a piece of paper down here so I don't drown my bench. And what we're going to do now, I think I'll move our spring winder over a bit so you can see what's happening. There we go. You can see that now. What I need now, a little bit of kerosene on a little piece of scourer pad. being one of those. I'll just dip it into the bottle and get it wet. Make sure I don't spill any on the desk. What we do now is we fold the piece of scarab pad in half and then slowly rub it up and down the spring. We travel all the way along on the spring and let the spring winder just spins around, and we continue running backwards and forwards along the spring until we reach as far as we can go up it. That's got a loop in it there. I'll take that out and wind it around, and we can continue. We're just about as far as we're going to go there. So what we want now is a cloth. Doesn't have to be particularly clean, long as it's dry, and then let the spring run through your fingers while you're holding the cloth on the spring, and you're removing the kerosene from the spring. Twang, and off it goes. Alright, so that's the first part, but what we've got to do now is make sure that our spring is actually clean. I'll get a piece of clean cloth. So what we'll do now is we'll go back to the end of the spring. That brings up the beginning of the spring. So once again, as we did with our last piece of cloth, and this is clean cloth this time, we slowly pull the spring through the clean cloth while we're holding it relatively tightly. And let down the pressure on the mainspring, and it'll just spin round like rattling a carpet snake or a python, one of these things. One of these long springs, they're seriously strong. Alright, there we go, that's the end of the spring. Change the position on your cloth and run the spring back in the opposite direction. And there we go. Now we'll put some grease on the spring and then put it away in a plastic bag once we've wound it up again, so that we know which strain it comes from. That's the bag we're going to put it in, and you can see it's got going written on it. It's obviously been used before, there's grease and stuff in it. That's the going side mainspring, and that's the bag we're going to put it in. Alright, now I'll take the spring off the spring winder under our little chuck, comes straight out, so we can now grease the spring. Now the spring is clean, we can now re-grease it before we compress it again and put a mainspring clamp on it. This is the grease we'll be using, PTFE grease that I use on all my clock springs. It's too strong to use on watch springs, you use a fine oil on that, but for clock springs it works very, very well. So using a toothpick, we pick up a little bit of grease and then start to work our way around each coil. You don't need very much, and you only work on one side of the coil, because once the spring is compressed, the grease will be squashed onto both sides of each coil, and thereby it's well lubricated. If you put grease on both sides at this stage, you'd have way too much, and there'd be a huge amount of grease that'd be squeezed out on the spring winder when you're compressing the spring. There'll always be a little bit of excess on it, but that's not a problem because we wipe it off once we're finished with compressing the spring, and before it goes in the bag, and then it just sits there. Then when we're ready to start rebuilding the movement, our spring is ready. We know which train it comes from. It's clean, it's greased, and it's ready to roll. I'll just check a couple of these pieces down here to make sure I've got sufficient grease on them. A little bit in down here. Run it round. And that one in there. And make sure that you've got grease in between each of the coils. And you can see if you've missed any areas. A little bit up there. No, that's looking all right. Okay, put the grease aside. And that's what a greased spring looks like before it goes back onto the spring winder and gets compressed, and then the excess grease is squeezed out of it. And that's what we're going to do now. Right, we're ready to compress our spring again. So we put the great wheel winding arm back into it. Tighten it down in the chuck and put our little clamp on it there to hold it in place, and we'll see how we went. Right, the spring's back on the spring winder now, and it's catching nicely now. Keep our fingers on the side of it so that it doesn't jump out. Wind it up and then check to see how much room we need more to put on our mainspring clamp, and it's spinning nice and easily. So we reverse the winder and then slowly let it wind down, holding the mainspring clamp in the center of the mainspring until all the tension is gone. Then open up the spring winder, remove the great wheel from it, and there we have it. There's our re-round spring. You can see now that the excess grease I was talking about has pushed out once we've flattened and tightened the coil. So we just run round the piece of cloth now, remove the excess grease that we've pushed out, clean it up. Once we've done that, so we then turn over the other side and wipe over the top of the coils like so, and that removes the excess grease. So we've got just the right amount of grease in there that we want now, that's going to last 4 or 5 years until the clock comes in for service once again, and it's all nice and neat. And there it is. Right, now that goes into our plastic bag with going written on it. That now gets put aside and waits until we start to reassemble the movement. I'll do the strike side mainspring off camera, and then we'll be back to continue. I'll move some of these pieces out of the road, and we'll start off by removing the rust out of the coil gong. You can see they're seriously rusty. For that I'll be using some medium grade steel wool. I'll start off on the back because that's where it's cleanest. I'll just rub around over the coils, and then I'll press open the coils. As you can see, the rust there. So we'll run over those. That removes it pretty nicely. Turn around a bit more. Open the coils up and rub over them with our steel wool. I think there's some down the bottom there. Yep. Pretty tightly wound that coil. It's not easy to get it open, but we have, so that's all right round there. And that side's not too bad. There's a little bit. We'll get rid of that. We'll run round the outside here. That's certainly got rust on it. Now we're back to the bad side now. Alright, we'll just start rubbing our steel wool over the coils. We'll take off what we can generally, and then we'll start looking specifically. And there you can see the rust inside the coils. We won't be able to get all this off, but we're certainly going to make a difference and get most of it off. That's lifting off all right. The tighter coils down the bottom are a little bit of a challenge, but that'll work all right. Push it out again. There's a bit more. And a bit more up the outside there. This medium steel wool is doing a reasonable job on this. There's a little bit more. I'll put a finger into that and push it out. And that is pretty much what we're going to get done. It's looking a hell of a lot better, and most of the rust from inside those coils have gone. A little bit there. Alright, now as usual, regular viewers will know, once we've put steel wool on an unblued piece of steel in a clock movement, we always give it a light going over with oil on this little bit of rag. It looks like it might have dried up a bit. I'll put another drop of oil on this. It's general purpose clock oil. It appears that the rag is a bit drier than I thought, so I'll put 3 drops on it. Push it together, roll it round a bit, spread it out. It's not Mobius clock oil that I use on friction parts. It just needs to be a general purpose light oil, clock oil or a light oil, probably Singer sewing machine oil or thereabouts would do the job. It's just to keep the rust a little bit at bay, so it'll take it longer to discolour again. On the outside, and there we have it. Right, I think there's a little bit of rust on that thread there. I might as well get rid of that while we're here. Put our woolly rag away, give it a quick run round, just twisting it backwards and forwards, holding the steel wool pretty tightly on the thread. And as you can see, that's a lot better than when we started off. Get our little piece of woolly rag again. Hold it on the thread, roll it round. Doesn't take very much. And the steel nut type thing, because it's not actually a nut, but it's the part that locks it down, looks alright. Alright, so there's our coil gong, looking pretty damn good actually. Alright, put that aside. Put the top on our woolly rag for a minute. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to start cleaning up the cup belt. And while we're at it, we're going to look at the little brass nut that holds it in place, and you can see it's a bit rough all round. Bits of dirt and probably dried up oil and stuff on it, so I'll run over that with our piece of steel wool That'll clean it up relatively well. Doesn't take very much. Says here dropping it and almost losing it. That's the side that I've cleaned up. That's the other side that hasn't been cleaned yet. So a quick run over that, and that'll come up quite nicely and ready to go back into play. Alright, I'll put that aside in our little container there so I don't lose it. Now this is the cup bell that the movement strikes on. It looks seriously rusty, a very fine coat of rust on it there, so I'll initially run over it with our piece of steel wool and remove the top layer of whatever the top layer might happen to be, and then we'll put the bell on our Fordham machine and see if we can put a little bit of a polish on it. Mind you, it's looking better already. You can see the light reflecting off it. Alright, I'll get our Fordham down and we'll have a quick look at that and see if we can put a little bit more of a polish on that. It doesn't need very much, but it's worthwhile looking to see whether the Fordham will make a difference or not. Alright, we've got our Fordham machine here now. We'll start polishing the cup bell now to see how it turns out. I'll be using the red polishing compound on this wheel and the white ultra fine on the buffing wheel. We've turned the machine on slowly at first so we can add some polishing compound to the wheel. We'll turn it up a little bit more and just lightly start running around the outside of the cup bell. Once we've been round the side, we'll start touching up the top, and I think this cup bell may have been anodized or some such. I think it's not making much of a difference to the colour. The grinding compound's obviously taking material off the top. I'll give that a quick wipe and we'll see what we've got. Looking shinier, but still the same colour, so I reckon that's been treated. Alright, now over to the buffing wheel, that big fat one there. Turn the machine on slowly, put a little bit of our white vinyl polishing compound on. Those two colour polishing blocks are the same compound blocks that we use once we've finished turning a bowl on a woodworking lathe and we want to polish the outside. They're the same grades that we use. I'll turn the polisher up a little bit and we'll run round the bottom first with our fine polishing compound on it. I have a feeling it's not going to make very much difference, but it's going to make it a little bit shinier. We'll run up the, so it certainly is, we'll run up the side of the cup bell there on our third side, and then round to the fourth side, and then across the top. Yep, same colour, but certainly getting a bit of gloss about it. Right, I'll wipe that off with a cloth. We can have a look and see what the cup bell looks like now. That has come up rather nicely for just a little bit of work on the Fordham machine. The cup bell has come up really nicely. Alright, put that back into its container. Now we're going to polish some pivots. Not on the Fordham, but we are going to polish some pivots. I'll put the Fordham away and then we'll come back. This is a close-up of one of the pivot bushing alignments that we will be looking at in episode 8. Alright, now we're going to look at polishing pivots. And today I'm going to show you another way that you can polish pivots. You've seen me polish pivots on a lathe, as well as using one of these little popsicle sticks cut in half with some 2000 mesh wet and dry sandpaper on it, and holding the pivot between the two halves of the popsicle stick. Spin the wheel round by turning the arbor, and that will remove any high spots that are on the pivot, and you can see that's also looking a bit shinier. Bearing in mind, when we're polishing pivot, we're not looking to remove material as such, though any highlights we remove, there will be a little bit less material in each pivot. But we're looking at just removing the highlights and polishing it a tiny bit, and this relates specifically to pivots that have no lines scored into them, as you've seen on some of my other videos. But this one looks pretty good. So what we'll do this time, we'll need a pin vise. We'll drop the long arbor in initially, tighten down the pin vise. We don't want the wheel to turn. This time we're going to use a 2400 mesh micro mesh pad, and to do that we place the pivot on the pad, put our thumb on top of it and hold the two together, and then spin the pin vise round. It's a lot easier to do it that way than trying to turn it on the arbor, holding it on the arbor. And you can see that's looking all right, nice and shiny. All right, reverse the wheel in the pin vise, tighten it down. Little bit of discoloration there. While I've got this, I'll spin it round with a piece of fine steel wool, holding it relatively tightly on the arbor. That'll get rid of any surface rubbish on the top of it to make it look a bit cleaner. Alright, back to the pivot. Align it on the micro mesh pad. Put your thumb over the top to hold it into the pad. And spin the pin vise around. You can see they look pretty shiny. Alright, we'll have a look and see what else we've got. And we'll do another one and then we'll move on to the next step. What do we got here? I'll do the rest of these off camera, but that one certainly needs a clean. Alright, maintenance cam, the piece there. Pop the arbor into the pin vise, tighten it down so it doesn't turn round. Once again, 2400 mesh micro mesh pad. Hold the pivot between your thumb and the pad and spin the pin vise around in your hand. And it doesn't take very much to remove the discoloration. Not much at all. Alright, reverse that, being very careful this time because there's not much arbor down there. We don't want to damage the pinion there. Right, so pinion back onto the micro mesh block and spin it round. keeping the pin vise parallel to the top of your desk. We don't want it jumping up and down all over the place like that. We may well damage the pinion that's in there on a very small arbor. Alright, and I'll put a couple of spins on that with a piece of very fine steel wool. Well, that's come up rather nicely. Right, pop that back into the block. Now I'll run over the rest of these and then I'll come back and then we'll start putting the movement back together again. Alright, now we're going to put the wheels in. We'll start off with the strike train to see how good the pivot bushing alignments are. It's always a good idea to start off with the main wheel to get your orientation, because it's very simple to put all the wheels in upside down and find they don't work. So that's a great wheel with a count wheel on the top, of course, and the first wheel goes in that hole there. So we'll lift up the great wheel, drop it in, and you'll notice that the first wheel resides in between the great wheel and the count wheel, and that's its correct position. Now the maintenance cam, they're the lugs that work the hammer. It goes into that pivot there. We'll see how much play is in that. Some of those holes have been rebushed and they look a little bit off round, but we'll check them out in a moment. Warning wheel. Actually, what I'll do is I'll take the great wheel out. That'll make it a bit easy. We can move that along. Right, under the maintenance cam goes the warning wheel. Whoop, it's moving all over the place. That's got him. And on top of that goes the fly, which sits there. Alright, trying not to push those out. We now get the back plate and have a look and see what we've got. Okay, that fast slow lever goes in that hole there, and then we lie the plate down carefully on top of the other plate. Align the posts down the bottom. We've got those two there aligned. So I'll put a nut on each of those. Should go down a tiny bit, yep. Only need half a turn to hold it, because we don't want to break any pivots off. And it's just to make it slightly easier for us to align the pivots into the holes and the bushings. Alright, that one's a bit tight. I'll take that off and replace it. Be replacing my gloves soon too by the look of that. Alright, now get our pivot tool, pick up our movement or part thereof, and turn it over so we can see what we've got. And we'll start aligning pivots. The first wheel in under there for the maintenance cam, and they're a bit, actually what I'll do, they're a little bit loose there, so I'll put these couple of posts in, and that in theory and practice I guess will make it easier for us to get the other wheels in. Lift it up a little bit, move that across to there, lift the plates again, tighten the nuts a tiny little bit, and we'll see. Oops, come out again. That's the post that has the hammer on it for the cup bell. Alright, that might be slightly easier now. Alright, first wheel, push him back and align him, dropped into the hole, maintenance cam down inside here, not that you can see very much, pretty dark down in there. I think that I'll pull that over. That has got to come back a fair way actually, and drop in under the warning wheel there. That's getting better. That pillar hasn't aligned very well. Well, the maintenance cam is playing hard to get on with, but we're getting pretty, almost getting pretty close. That's got him. Alright, now, first wheel should now stay in position. Bring him up, there we go. 1, 2, warning wheel. Carefully lift him up so we don't do a pivot in. Dropped in. And now, last but not least, the fly goes in there. Alright, I'll hold that. I'll put a nut on there, tighten it down, and where's our spanner, says he, looking round hopefully, and see how we go. I think that's a beastie. I think, yep, there we go. Alright, tighten that down a bit so we can check and see what the pivot bushing alignments are like. That is a bit tight, isn't it? And not having the correct sized spanner doesn't make it very easy either. It's getting there. Okay, and that's looking better. I'll tighten these couple down here. That's a bit easier on the spin. And this guy here that's a bit tighter might need a little bit more incentive to actually get a move on and do what we want it to do. There we go. Now, we've got 1, 2 there. That's a lever that activates the cup belt, and I would say that that has been bent slightly out of whack because it's rubbing on the plate. Alright, that's where the cup bell sits, of course, and we'll see that once we get round to putting it on. Alright, let's have a look and see what we've got here. Alright, let's have a look and see what we've got here in the way of range of movements and motion. I'll turn the first wheel. You can see everything's running pretty smoothly there. Now we're going to look at the individual bushings and see what we're up against. We'll start off by looking at that pivot bushing combination there. Yeah, that is in actual fact a little bit sloppy. That one there, I'll do a close-up of that at the moment. We look at the warning wheel. That one there. Yeah, a bit suspicious. I have a feeling we might be redoing that. And now, the fly, which is that one there. Yep, they look like they're all going to be replaced. They will have to be replaced. Alright, maintenance cam, that one. I'll lift it up and down. Not too bad, but warning wheel. You can see that one flapping around the breeze. And the fly. Yeah, nice. All right. Well, that will account for them, I suppose, fitting nice and freely. They're all pretty damn loose. Cool, look at the end play on that. You can get it straight up and you can see it. Look at the end play on that. All right. And huge amount of end play on the fly too, though that nut there is not quite tight enough. As in that needs to be tighter once movement is finished. I'll tighten that down a bit. We'll check the end play again, and I reckon a lot of that would have disappeared. Yep, a bit of it and that one. All right, now before we go any further, I purchased a new tool the other day because we haven't always got a spanner that fits exactly on the size of the nut that we want. So I picked up this 7-piece tool, and it's got 6 different sized socket, T-handle, metric, socket, nut driver set. Yes, well, that's all very impressive. Let's just have a look and see. I'll cut the bottom of this and we can have a look and see what we've got in the way of sizes to make it easier to add or subtract nuts from clock pillars. Now, nope, too small. All right, try the next one. Not quite. The next one, what does that say? 8. CRB chrome vanadium. Well, isn't that excellent? 8's too big and 6 is too small. So that was an excellent purchase. That worked out really well. There's no number 7 in it. Only even numbers, no odd numbers. $25, but anyway, I hope they will fit some other nuts that I've got around the place. So we'll wait and see. All right, I'll clean that mess up later and put it together. But it certainly didn't assist us in this job. So I'll have to tighten that one at the top. And I don't think my old set will have one to fit. I don't think. I'll have a look for the largest one. No, not going to fit. Close. Close, but not quite. That's the largest size. Alright, well, we've done well on those couple of sets. Neither of them fit. Not to worry. I'll pull this down a little bit more. Have another look and see. Check some end play. Yep, nowhere near as much now. It's tightened, but unfortunately those bushings are going to have to be replaced. And just looking at these ones here, slightly off center, each one of those. So I would say we'll be up for replacing those. Though they're new brass ones. Those ones. And the rest are old, really old ones. All right, let's try the other side and verify my ideas that we're going to have to rebush the entire plate. Right, I'll take the plates apart and we'll investigate the going side train and see what we've got there in relation to bushings. And I'll probably do most of the bushing offline because it takes time, and I think you've seen it all in the last couple of bushing videos I did, how to replace a bushing with a reamer, how to use a a bushing machine. I did a couple on that, and then how to use a cutting broach to do some rebushing. Right, take these guys off. I'll check the other side, and then I'm quite sure that we're going to have a serious amount of bushings. The ones on the back are all right. It's the guys on the front that are the problem. All right, plates apart. That one and that one, there we go, popped off. Now we'll check the going side train. Right, I'll put the going side train wheels in. Turn the movement round. Put the fast slow adjustment rod goes into that hole there. Align the pillars. One there, and did that. Chase up the couple of posts in here that we had problem with before, the cup bell post, get it to sit, and that post there should drop in, but it's not. Alright, well, one there has to come over further. Now that and our cup bell post going there. Right, put a nut on that pillar to hold it for a moment. Give us a little bit of extra working space here. And align that post. Nut to hold it. A little bit too tight. I've got to bring that cup bell up and over to there. That's got him right. Now I can tighten it up a bit. So not everything's going to drop out on us, but not too tight. We don't want to go snapping any pivots. Right, slowly turn the movement on its side so we can see what we're doing. And first wheel goes there, click, drop into place. Second wheel, I'll bring the escape wheel over, it's pressing on that too much. Alright, second wheel, where's our third wheel inside? First wheel, second wheel, and that post should be sitting there. That'll make it a bit easier, I would think. Okay, escape wheel up a tiny bit, goes there. Third wheel goes there, and that post is not wanting to align exactly. That looks a bit better. Right, we'll start off. First wheel, yep. Second wheel, careful of the pivot. There we go, pushing her in. Third wheel, sliding up. Ooh, yep. And the fourth wheel, the escape wheel, normally has longer pivots on it. You've usually got to put that in before you can get the other ones finally aligned. Oh, missed it. Beast of a thing. Alright, 1, 2, 3, and we'll push open the place slightly with our fingers and move the escape wheel down. That's bushing is not flush on the inside, that's why the escape wheel's finding it hard to drop its pivot in. Keeps getting caught on the damn thing. Okay, that one. And probably should have run a very fine file over that to take that little lip off it before I started trying to put all these guys in. But it's just there, and no, still It's locked somewhere. All right. Check that out. That's right. Oh, yep. Third wheel's dropped out. That's why it's not spinning. Third wheel back in again. Ah, everything fell into place then. Put a nut on that post. It's a shame I haven't got the correct size spanner. It would make it a damn sight easier. And there's not many small sets of spanners available these days. All right, let's see what we got. Have we got any movement there or not? At this point in time, all right, that's got him. I'll spin the first wheel. We can see what action we've got. Everything's spinning okay. So all the wheels are in the right orientation. We won't worry about that putting an actually we'll put a nut on that because that'll make it a little bit more accurate when we're looking for end play. I must see if I can find another small set of spanners. This is coming very handy, and you're forever modifying them to fit different size worn out nuts, so they never actually fit exactly the way they're supposed to. Alright, let's have a look and see. Now, that and that and that and that are new bushing, so I assume that they're going to be alright. We'll look at the first wheel first, that one there. Well, yep, he needs to be changed. That's a new one. Second wheel, no, looks pretty good. Third wheel, not sloppy on the other side, on the front, but on the back, but not on the front. And the escape wheel. Oh, dear oh dear, look at that. That one will have to be done. That's atrocious. Alright, fair enough. Let's look at the back plate now. And we'll look at that pivot there. And it's not too bad. Second wheel. Yeah, great. That'll have to be redone. Third wheel. That pivot there. Huh. Don't even bother. I'll take a close-up of that. That's pretty impressive, the amount of slop in that. Alright, well, if we've got to do more than 3/4, we'll do the whole lot at the same time. This idea of just doing the really bad ones and then leaving the medium bad ones for someone else to do doesn't cut it. It's very poor workmanship. If you're replacing one side, you replace the other one. We're ready to start doing the bushing on the plates now. And the first one I'll start with, if I can get a grip on this and not lose it, is I'll start off on the third wheel. I've got some drawings I'm going to do on the whiteboard to explain how we set up and find the correct centre of a hole that's so dramatically bad as that. And then we'll actually get on to the rebushing. Looking at the bushing we've got there we saw a moment ago, that's the bushing and it's inside the plate, and we notice that the hole in the bushing has been worn oblong like so. Now the problem is, if you just put a reamer straight down into there, we'll use this to demonstrate a reamer. If you put the reamer straight down into there, it will automatically find halfway between the two extremities, and when you're turning it, it will drop down and it will make a hole that big, round but that big, and it'll be in the center of the bushing. Take the middle bit out, do it like that, that'll be easier to see. And that'll be the size of your bushing hole, which is way, way too big. So there's a method we use to stop that happening. We'll go back to our bushing again, which sort of looks a bit round. And our hole, exaggerated, looks like that. The first thing we do is work out where the centre of the hole should be. The centre of the hole is equidistant all the way round there in each direction. Now you can see, even on my diagram here, that the bottom part of the hole here is way out of line compared to the top half up there. So what we have to do, having seen from our last drawing, that the reamer will automatically find the middle between that point and that point. That's the last thing that we want to happen. So what we do is we open up this side of the bushing to the same distance as is on the bottom down there. It's relatively the same. And how we do that is we use a rat tail file, one of those. Don't use a square file or a triangular file, they'll make it even worse. So what we do is we gradually file away on the top up here like so, until the distance from the outside of the new hole to the centre is very close from the centre to the bottom down here. And then having done that, when the reamer goes into the centre, it will then open up that distance between there and there, and the centre of the hole will be there. I'll remove this top piece. I'll get rid of that and redo that. So that was our original hole. If we just dropped the reamer in now, the halfway point between the top and the bottom of that hole is about there. And you can see that that's way below the actual centre of the bushing where the pivot should go. And we want the pivot to go right in the centre. So if we start reaming out the hole here, that will then be the centre of the hole when it's finished, and then you drop a new bushing in it instead of, that's your plate coming down there, your bushing, the plate coming down there, instead of the pivot sitting exactly parallel on both sides of the bushing and running smoothly around. And then once it gets a drop of oil on it, the friction is really reduced right down. Instead of that happening, on our second scenario here, there's our plate. Once again, we've put the bushing in, but it's out of alignment. So what happens then, exaggerated, is that the pivot then sits like that in the bushing. And that's how you get score marks on the top and down that end of a pivot as it spins round. Even though it's been oiled, there's very little friction. Well, there's zero friction up here. All the friction is on that point there and on that point there. So you then end up with a pivot that has got a line running around there and a very faint one running around there, but a heavy line in around there. Then that has to be removed before you can use the pivot again. And the only way to really remove that is to use a lathe. You can't do it by popsicle sticks, etc., and just sort of filing it in your hand like that. It's not going to be round. Right, so that's what we're going to do. Initially, I'll reset the hole on that bushing using a rat tail file. Then I'll replace the bushing. because there's so many to do, it's going to take quite some period of time to do. I'll use my bushing machine. It is a very, very efficient machine, and I am quite fast on it because I've done a hell of a lot of bushings on it. So it'll be a lot faster than just using a reamer in a pin vise. But you'll see the operation as how I do it, and I'll do one, this really bad one, and the pivot will sit there and it won't be sliding up and down in that direction. So that's what we're going to do now. Right, this is the bushing that we're going to replace initially, this really, really bad one on the third wheel. So I'll take it out of the plate. I'll do one side of this initially, then I'll do the rest of them offline. So that is the plate, and that's the positioning of the wheel on it. So the first thing we'll have to do is we'll have to measure the diameter on a vernier, zero it off first, and then measure the diameter of the pivot, which we measure there, 1.09 mils. Right, put the vernier aside. I'll put the wheel face down with the pivot we're working on into a foam block, so we know which is which end we're working on. I'll write that down on my notepad. .09 millimeters. Next thing we do is we have a look at our Bergen, our box of Bergen bushes, and that rubber band looks pretty much expired, I think. It's all fallen to pieces. Alright, so we're looking for 1.09 millimeters. A number 42, I'll take a photo and you'll be able to see this more accurately in a moment. Number 42 is 1 mil, and a number 43 is 1.10 mil. So initially, just to check, I'll get out a number 43, which is one of those bushings there. Put it on my hand. Glove's a bit tight, it's going to move around, but put it on my hand like so. Then get the pivot and see if we can insert it into the bushing. And we can't quite. Not quite. Alright. So that appears to be, though that's 1.10, now there's 1.09, a fraction of a difference there. But obviously a number 42 is not going to fit. Alright, so we'll write that down. It's a number 43 bushing. Number 43 bushing, it's 1.09 millimeters, and the external diameter of the bushing is 3.00 millimeters. So that's the size of the largest reamer that we're going to use. A huge thank you to my Patreon and YouTube members who make this video possible. Without their kind help, I would not be able to keep this channel alive and to make these videos for a living. I can't thank them enough. If you want to support my channel, join my Patreon or YouTube.